When we picture the American pioneer, we usually imagine a single, punishing journey. A family packs a wagon, survives the trail, crosses the mountains, and finally stops in a fertile valley to build a permanent home. This map shows the travels of Lydia Ann Lake Nelson. Her life follows an intricate web of over 15 interconnected paths, stretching from the Great Lakes to the heart of Mexico. Arriving in the Promised Land was rarely the end of her journey. It was often a temporary stop in a life of relentless migration. Her life on the move began almost immediately. Born in Canada in 1832, Lydia was just a baby when her parents joined the early Mormon church and migrated south to Kirtland, Ohio. Her father quickly secured work making bricks for the young religion's first major structure, the Kirtland Temple. From infancy, Lydia's geography was dictated by her faith. As hostility toward her church grew, her family realized that their beliefs would frequently cost them the luxury of staying in one place. Religious persecution forced the family out of Ohio, pushing them westward through Missouri and eventually into Illinois. In 1844, a mob assassinated the church's founder, Joseph Smith, in Carthage. Word of the killings reached Lydia's father while he was reading his Bible. Within hours, the family threw a few household goods into their wagons and fled, abandoning a beautiful, unharvested crop for which they were never paid. They spent the next few winters surviving in extreme poverty near Council Bluffs. To support the family, Lydia's brother marched off to fight in the Mexican War, while Lydia herself worked as a dishwasher and bartender in a local tavern. By the summer of 1850, the family had finally saved enough to equip 2 wagons and 5 yoke of oxen, and they set out across the plains toward the Salt Lake Valley. The crossing was relatively smooth until they reached the Green River in Wyoming. The current tore a wagon box loose, sending it drifting downstream with a young woman and a 1-year-old child trapped inside. A quiet youth in the company named Price W. Nelson was the only one to dive into the stream and rescue them. Lydia and Price grew close following the event, and they married on the last day of 1850, shortly after arriving in the Salt Lake Valley. Lydia had finally reached the safety of the valley, but her father offered a warning on her wedding day. He told her, "Price is a good man, but will never be contented anywhere." Her father's prediction proved accurate almost immediately. Price's restlessness drove the new family out of Utah to pursue the sawmill business in San Bernardino, California. Over the next decade, the family traveled a massive geographic loop. They chased industry and resources from Southern California back into central Utah and eventually north into the Idaho Territory. The nature of their movement had shifted. They were no longer fleeing armed mobs. They were following the demands of the frontier, seeking timber and pristine farmland. They eventually pushed into Nevada, where they built a productive farming life. For 6 years, they lived comfortably, raising their children on what they could produce from the soil. Then political friction caught up with them again. State authorities imposed heavy taxes, and the settlers faced increasing abuse. When Brigham Young visited and saw the situation, he advised the entire community to move away. The family acted immediately. They abandoned luxuriant crops that were nearly ready for harvest and fled south to Glendale, Utah, carrying only the provisions they could fit in a single wagon. This total abandonment of property in Nevada demonstrates how these pioneer communities survived political pressure. For Lydia's family, the response to friction was often total relocation, uprooting their entire lives rather than surrendering to local authorities. Their final major migration took them even further south. Seeking to escape the jurisdiction of the United States, Lydia and Price crossed the border into Mexico, colonizing Cave Valley and eventually Oaxaca in Sonora. They built a ranch and a comfortable home, but in 1902, Price's health failed. His death in Mexico brought a final end to the wandering his father-in-law had predicted 50 years earlier. 2 years later, a catastrophic flood swept through the valley, destroying the ranch and everything the family had built. By 1912, the violence of the Mexican Revolution forced the Mormon colonists into a mass exodus. Lydia joined the body of refugees fleeing back to the United States, eventually arriving in Arizona. Despite a lifetime of forced departures, Lydia raised 13 children. By the end of her 92 years, she had 112 grandchildren and 184 great-grandchildren. Building the American West required a staggering level of endurance. Generations like Lydia's had to find the strength to build a home, lose it to violence or nature, and start over again 1,000 miles away.